All right, welcome to Wednesday Night Live, presented by Pioneer Baptist Church. I am Pastor Edmund Lugo, and I will be your host this evening, as is typically the case, for Wednesday Night Live, our study through the book of Ecclesiastes, along with some other fun stuff along the way. So, if you are here, let us know, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on YouTube. Let us know you're here with us in the comment sections, the live chat. It's always both an encouragement to me to know that you're here, but also when it comes time to interact or answer questions, we know who we're hearing from. And so it's good to have a few of you watching. We can always tell if people are viewing, but for you to let us know you're here is always helpful. So I'll give you just a minute to do that. It's good to have the Harts here with us. It's good to have the Kellys here with us. My own family downstairs, and so that's great as well. And glad you guys are here. One of my favorite things is that the Kellys typically have it going on in two different places. Eric will watch on Facebook, and Kristen will watch on YouTube. That way they get all the channels covered. Anita as well is here, so glad you guys are here as well. And just giving a few other people an opportunity to jump on here and let us know that they're here. Again, we can see our viewers starting to go up as we get closer to 7 o'clock. And hope it has been a good Wednesday for you. It is the sun, as I can see out of my window here, is just starting to creep out. But it's been a very, very cold Wednesday. But I have been able to stay warm wherever you are. And again, glad you could be able to join us tonight for our study through the book of Ecclesiastes, as well as a few other things. And so I hope, again, you're ready to engage, you're ready to follow along with us, you're ready to answer questions and all of those different kinds of things. And so Kristen says in multiple places, phone, TV, I'm just everywhere. If you're on Facebook, the Louks jumped on with us as well, and so good to see Jared and Kathleen on here as well. My son Josiah is downstairs too. And so, all right, we have a few of you on here, and we'll go ahead and get started. And so let me see here really quickly, finding what I'm looking for here. Oh, yes, we are going to jump into the Would You Rather. Would you rather? I've got a couple of different ones here for you for just a minute. Some things for you to think about. This is the Would You Rather for today. It is this. Would you rather lose your sight or lose your memory? Would you rather lose your sight or lose your memories? Those are both difficult for me. Obviously, lose your sight. You're not going to be able to see anything for the rest of your life. And then if you lose your memories, all of the wonderful things that have happened in the past, but as well as the bad things that have happened in the past, will be erased from your memory. So if you had to choose one, which one would you choose to give up and why? Would you rather lose your sight or would you rather lose your memory? Go ahead and let us know in the comment section, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. Jump in here. Kristen, I completely agree. She says, I feel like I'm halfway there with my sight and my memory already. No doubt about it. I feel that exact same way. Let's see here. Gabe says, memories. Katie says, what is up with these questions? They're would you rathers. You got to choose one. They're difficult questions you got to think about. And so that's what makes them, if they were all easy and fluffy, like which one do you like better, ice cream or cake, I mean, that's like easy stuff. We got to engage our minds and think a little bit. Okay, we got a lot of people, let's see, Gabe says memory, the Lauk say sight, Emily says probably sight. Any specific reasons why? Any specific reasons why people choose the one that they choose? If you choose to rather lose your memory or your sight. So the hearts say, at least I can remember what I used to see. I will say that is the advantage of that one is if you've had sight for some time, that will be retained in your memories. And so when you hear a bird or you hear of a color, you at least have some semblance of an idea what that is. So, uh, Katie says, if I have to choose, then I choose sight. Anita says sight. She said she could still learn to sing or play music by ear. And so, there you go. All right, most people, here we go. Looking through here, some of these other answers. So, some of you are hitting on the same reasons or same ideas as other people. So, it looks like most of you say sight. You'll give up your sight, keep your memories. The only outlier up to this point is Gabe. Gabe says he'll give up his memories. Gabe, you have a reason why? Josiah, my two kids, man, look like they've had a wonderful childhood. They love to just forget. And so my kids say no memories, both of them. Gabe says memories. Josiah says memories. So, any insight onto why those of you that say what you say, why you say it? Some of you have already said, but if anybody wants to add in there, go ahead and let us know. Because I am such an insightful person. Hold on. I'm reading some of these other things here. Cassie says sight. Terry Cross says, on the other hand, if I have my sight, it's easier to make new memories. It's true. Josiah says he's young. He doesn't have much to lose when it comes to memories. It's true, too. But because I am such an insightful person and such a forward thinker, and I knew somebody like Katie would come around and complain, I added a bonus would you rather tonight that is not as difficult. Okay? Well, at least for me, it's not as difficult. Maybe for some other people, all right? Here it is. The bonus would you rather. Would you rather talk like Yoda or breathe like Darth Vader? Now remember, it's all of the time for the rest of your life. Because some of you might choose one over the other just immediately. But remember, this is all of the time for the rest of your life. It does not mean that you would be as witty as Yoda or as powerful as Darth Vader. It would just mean that you talk like Yoda or you breathe like Darth Vader. All right, so here we go. What are some of the answers? Okay, I'm going back and reading. While you guys answer that one, I'm going to go back and read some of the other ones about sight or memory. Gabe says, it would help me to live in the present better as well. I really like my sight. That's true. That is very true. It's right there what's in front of you. Let's see. Katie says she chooses sight because she wouldn't want to forget the memories of their family, the sounds and ability to play violin, and most of the memories of falling in love with Azariah. Oh, so cute. Let's see. Cassie says she'd rather talk like Yoda. Katie Miller says Yoda for sure. Anita says talk like Yoda, a creature of few words. It's very true as well. Who else? Let us know. You say, let's see here. Here we go. Oh. Okay, I've lost some of these Facebook comments. I'm just now getting to them. Eric says no further memories. If I can make new memories, then he'd lose sight. The Lauk said I'd rather hold on to my memories of my kids, my spouse, my past. Emily says, why would you want to do either? Eric says he's taken Yoda. Talk like Yoda. Jared says the Lauk say Darth Vader all the way. Talk about creeping people out in the dark. That's true. Let's see here. I got some more talk like Yoda. Yoda, I'd rather be funny than scary. That's true. Because that would definitely, as the Lauks mentioned as well, creeping people out in the dark, that would be really scary to hear all of the time. Daniel says talk like Yoda. Kristen says talk like Darth Vader. Ooh, that's interesting. Kristen says Darth Vader. Eric says Yoda. Terry Cross says Yoda for sure. Josiah says Yoda for sure. All right, we got some major Yoda action going on here. So that was the bonus. Would you rather talk like Yoda, breathe like Darth Vader? If you asked some of your wives, or even my wife, they might say we breathe like Darth Vader in the middle of the night. No comment. So, yeah, exactly. See, Kristen says then I have an excuse for my snoring. Exactly. It's like, oh, it's not me. I just breathe like Darth Vader. That's kind of what I've been cursed with. So, All right, those are our two would you rathers. Let's go to the fact of the day. Yes, that's right. I added two would you rathers and a fact of the day. Um, Here we go. Ready? Here it is. Fact of the day. And think about this for you. I found this interesting, and I'll make some comments on it here for just a second. Fact of the day. Did you know that right-handed people chew most of their food on the right side of their mouth, and left-handed people chew most of their food on the left side of their mouth? Why they're correlated that way, I have no idea, but that's what it says. It's funny because I am left-handed. Any of you other people out there, any other lefties out there? I am left-handed, which means I'm in my right mind. But I'm left-handed, and people growing up always assumed that just because I'm left-handed, that I would be left-footed. Those things, there's no correlation between those two. They're not, there's not like this connection between my arm and my leg that if I use one on one side, I have to use one on the other side. But for some reason, when we chew our food, we're also the same way. Most of the time, right-handed people chew most of their food on the right side of the mouth. Left-handed people chew most of their food on the left side of the mouth. Guess what? I thought about this for a minute and realized that is true. For me, I'm a left-handed person, and I chew most of my food on the left side of my mouth. I sure do. Anybody else notice that when you think about it? Some of you might be grabbing something right now and putting your mouth on it to chew on it and going, "Oh, which one is it?" So Katie says she's left-handed too. Now that I think about it, I think I do chew on the left side. Yep. So it's kind of weird. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does appear that most of the time that is the way that it works. If somebody is better at science or biology or any of that kind of stuff that might have a reason for that, let us know. But that is the fact of the day. All right. Let's see. The right side of the brain controls the left side of the body and vice versa. That means that left-handed folks are the only ones in their right mind. That's correct. That's why I said I'm left-handed. I'm in my right mind. All right, let's move on to the book of Ecclesiastes. If you happen to have a copy of God's Word, you can take it and go to Ecclesiastes chapter 7. If you turn there, you may notice that Ecclesiastes chapter 7 has 29 verses. We probably will not get to all 29 verses tonight. We may just get through about the first 10 of them. As we finished Ecclesiastes chapter 6 last week, we discussed some of these ideas that people struggled with in this world: riches without enjoyment, labor without satisfaction, questions without answers. And we talked about how all of these things could drive people absolutely crazy, drive them absolutely batty, and if that was the purpose of life, if enjoyment was the purpose of life, if satisfaction was the purpose of life, if having all the answers to all of your questions were the purpose of life, then it would drive people mad to have riches without enjoyment and labor without satisfaction and questions without answers. However, when we see life as a gift from God to be lived for the glory of God, then that changes our perspective on life. Again, we're talking about living life under the sun, but with a perspective from above. That's above that. And so that's what Ecclesiastes is really all about. Now, as we jump into Ecclesiastes chapter 7, many of you have probably heard the phrase, ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. If you remember, we're going to look at it here in just a second. You remember when we went back, if we go back to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, Solomon had a lot to say about wisdom. And one of the things that he said about wisdom in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 18, he said this: "For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow." I mean, basically he's saying ignorance is bliss. Man, it may be better just to not know anything, because the more that I know, the more information I gather, the more I realize about this world and the nature of man, the more grief and sorrow it brings. And we understand that to some extent that's true. And so in the beginning, we almost look as if Solomon says, you know what, sometimes it's just better to be ignorant about all of those things. However, we should realize by now that many of Solomon's statements in Ecclesiastes are not the conclusion of the whole matter. And that is the case when it comes to wisdom. If we just read Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 18, we may think that Solomon, by the way, who was probably the wisest human outside of Jesus who ever lived, and Jesus obviously was God in the flesh, but he, if we just read Ecclesiastes chapter 1, we may think, man, here's a guy who says wisdom, like, why deal with it? Because it brings grief and sorrow. But that is not the conclusion of the whole matter. Because in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, Solomon adds some more thoughts on wisdom. And especially in chapters 7 through 8. It's almost as if you see his opinion of wisdom as he looks and learns some more. His opinion on wisdom changes, and that made me think for just a minute. I have this question I want you to think about. Um, what is a subject that your opinion on has changed over the years? Now, let me say this. Don't put anything too serious, okay? I don't want to get into a debate or start one on this forum. This is not the time or the place for that, right? So we're not talking about major serious issues or even, at this point, probably not even major doctrinal issues. But can you think of a subject where maybe over time and the more you learned about it, your opinion has changed a little bit about those things? We almost see something like that. Solomon has these thoughts about wisdom, but over time it's like they grow a little bit more, and he adds to it, and he comes to realize that the gaining of wisdom doesn't just bring pain and sorrow; it can bring other things as well. And so waiting to see if anybody has one that just jumps out to them, some sort of some subject that you go, you know what, my opinion on this over time has changed. It doesn't have to be a complete 180. Maybe it could be just a little bit here or there. Okay, Eric says college sports. What do you mean by that? Like used to not like it, now you do, or used to not like it, now you do, or the ones you like, or what about that has changed? Who else? You have a subject that your opinion on has changed over the year. It could be something as simple as, for me, like I used to hate broccoli, and now broccoli might be my favorite vegetable. My opinion on that has changed drastically over time. I'm not going to wait too long, but if you happen to put some in as we go, I'll read something off. As we dive into, I'm going to ask some more questions that I want you to roll around in your mind, and I want you to answer for us tonight. But as we as we dive into Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and chapter 8, we will see that Solomon uses the word wisdom. Solomon uses the word wisdom no less than 14 times, and in chapter 7 he uses the word better no less than 11 times in chapter 7. We're getting some more answers in here, and so here we go. Right, Eric says college sports has become much more commercialized and doesn't like it as much. I agree. Katie says my opinion on how easy or hard it was to raise kids changed when I had them. Kristen says her opinion on boys changed. I used to think that boys were disgusting, and apparently, Eric, you are not disgusting. So her opinion on that has changed. Azariah says his opinion on the importance of math has changed. Oh, please! I hope my kids have not tuned out yet, and have read that. Because I'm sure when Azariah was their age, he thought this math is dumb. I'll never use it. And now he probably uses it every single day. Take note. Let's see here. We got some other ones. Okay, when I was just out of high school, I thought every male high school graduate should spend at least 2 years in the military. After having children of my own, I see that it isn't always the right life plan for every person. That's right. And so as we see, there are times where just as time goes by and we maybe garner some more information and we have more life experience, actually gain some more wisdom as we go, and sometimes our opinions change about things. And Solomon here says that he uses the word wisdom no less than 14 times, the word better or some form of it no less than 11 times in chapter 7. And one of the things he makes very clear is this: wisdom can make your life better. Now, this is the same guy in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 18 who says, with much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth in knowledge increaseth in sorrow. He goes on, though, and we'll see that he says wisdom can make your life better. Um, However, we may think, well, duh, Solomon, of course wisdom's going to make our life better. But just when you think you might have Solomon figured out, the way he says wisdom makes your life better might come as a shock. So get ready, put your thinking caps on, because I do want your help here before we even read the verses. I want to hear some of your answers. The very first thing that Solomon says is this. He says, wisdom, one of the ways that wisdom can make your life better is that wisdom helps you to understand that sorrow is better than laughter. You go, whoa, I wasn't expecting Solomon to go there. Okay. But I want you to think about this for just a minute. In what ways, and I want you to respond on here, I want you to answer for us here, okay? In what ways can sorrow be better than laughter? Think about that for a second. Um, Going back and reading some of these answers, see, that's good. Azariah and Katie working together. Uh, Azariah's answer to the previous question, he would choose to lose memories because my wife would still have hers, and we could balance each other out. Fair enough. And he would choose to talk like Yoda. So, all right, there we go. Got a couple more answers coming in there. But think about this for a second. I want you to think about that. When how can sorrow be better than laughter? So obviously there are certain situations where sorrow is the appropriate response. So Gabe mentions when someone passes away, sorrow is the appropriate response. Okay, um, and Daniel goes on and says, in sorrow, it's in those moments of sorrow that we learn to lean on God. Josiah also mentions, we have a couple people who mention people when they pass away, and the Claytons also mention learning to lean on God in your sorrows. Let's read Solomon's words in verses 1 through 4 together. He says this. He says, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. Just reading a few other responses here. Eric says, sorrow is a feeling of loss of something you had. Laughter can be because of something simple and not important. It's true. Sometimes mirth, the word the Bible uses here, entertainment can be so trivial. Usually, sorrow is about something that is much more meaningful. Well, we understand the Bible also tells us that laughter is like a medicine, that it helps at times to heal a broken heart. But as some of you have alluded to already tonight, oftentimes sorrow can be like the nourishing food that strengthens a person. Now we want both laughter and sorrow. Our life is full when we have both of those things. But in reality, what happens is laughter makes me feel better, but sorrow often grows me as a person. We oftentimes will grow through our moments of sorrow. Laughter makes me feel better in that moment, but sorrow is usually a time of growth for people. Um, we don't see it in our English translation here, but Solomon is using a play on words. He uses the word Shem, and that is the word name, and then he uses the word Shemen to mean ointment. And if you go back and you look at in verse 1, he says, a good name, Shem, is better than precious ointment, Shemen. So basically he would read, Shem is better than Shemen. That would be a play on words in the Hebrew language that we don't see in our English language. So I just wanted to point that out really quickly. But some people may look at this section of Ecclesiastes and think, man, Solomon's being really morbid. He's talking about sorrow being better than laughter. And I think the Claytons make a really good point as well. Without sorrow, it's much more difficult to appreciate laughter. Those moments of joy are girded up by those moments of laughter as well. But some people may look at this whole section here and think that, man, Solomon's being really, really morbid here as he talks about, the day of death being the better than the day of birth and those kinds of things. And so I think it's important for us to point something out here really quickly, okay? Solomon is contrasting the significance of both of those days. Don't mix up what Solomon is saying. Solomon did not say death is better than birth. That's not what he said. He said the day of somebody's death and the day of somebody's birth. He's contrasting the two experiences. He's contrasting the significance of the 2 days. Let me explain before we move on to the next thing, and I have some more questions for you. The day that a person is born, we understand, is typically the day a person receives their name. Okay? The day a person dies is the day that name usually ends up in the obituary column, right? And the life they live happens between the day that they're given a name and the day that their name is written in that obituary column or put on a tombstone, right? And that life in between will determine whether that name, the name, holds a foul stench or a loving fragrance. Because on the day of your death, your reputation is settled. On the day of your birth, you're just given a name. It doesn't really hold any weight. It doesn't have any meaning for people. But on the day of your death, your reputation is settled, and that's why he's saying the day of somebody's death is better than the day of somebody's birth, because on the day of their death, their life has meaning. It defines what that name means. And so don't get mixed up where he's saying, oh, it's so much better to be dead than to be alive. No, what he's talking about is the importance, the significance of the day you die. Because now your name is what your whole legacy, your whole character, everything that you left behind hinges on. People will always connect who you are to your name when you die. The day of birth is different. The day of birth, you're just given that name. But on your day of death, your reputation is settled. Now, verses 2 through 4, he goes on and says, it is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay this to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, the heart of the fools is in the house of mirth. Again, in verse 2, he says, for that is the end of all men. He's, as he often does, he's reminding us that a day of death is coming. Not to be preoccupied with it, but to realize that it's coming. And so make a good name for yourself, a godly name for yourself. It's so important. As Psalm 90 in verse 20 says, "So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom." Okay. Now, the second way that Solomon says that wisdom can make our life better, wisdom allows us to know that rebuke is better than praise. So I posit the question again. How? In what way is rebuke better than praise? I'm going to take a drink of water really quickly here while we wait for some of you to chime in here. In what way, or in what ways, is rebuke better than praise? You guys were on top of it with sorrow and laughter. How about this one? Rebuke and praise. Rebuke and praise. I'll read verse 5 for you while I wait for some of you to answer. He says, "It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools." He goes on and says, "For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This is also vanity." Again, he says, it is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. Okay? Okay? Let's see here. Anita says, in rebuke, there's something to be learned. Cassie says, rebuke builds character. Kristen says, rebuke rebuke allows for growth. Rebuke lends itself to learning and betterment. Clayton's also, Fred Clayton over here mentions you learn more and probably quicker from rebuke. People who really care about your future will, Eric says, people who care about your future will correct your ways. Others will maybe just be yes men, right? They also mention you tend to take rebuke more seriously. The Hearts mention that to be rebuked is humbling, and that's where God gives grace, which is what we want and we need and all the time is the grace of God. And it is in rebuke, in the humbling of rebuke, that we receive the grace of God. Daniel mentions that the praise of the fool will only puff up pride. Terry Cross says the same thing, can easily lead to pride. Whereas rebuke can help me grow if received properly. And I think Terry also, and we're not going to talk too much about it right now, but Terry also mentions the importance of receiving rebuke properly, and it's certainly a subject for another day, but I also think we should talk about giving rebuke properly, right? Because some people may think rebuke is like their gift to the local church, and certainly there are times where people need to be rebuked, and there are certain situations where that comes, but both learning to give it properly and receive it properly is unbelievably important. So I want to go back to really quickly verse 6 where it says, "For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fools. This is also vanity." Actually, I'm going to read the whole all, verses 5 and 6. "It's better to hear the rebuke of the wise than a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of fools. This is also vanity." There's another play on words here in the Hebrew language that we don't see in our English language. That word "song," where he says, "Then for a man to hear the song of fools," that's the Hebrew word "shir." The word "pot" is "sir," and the word "thorns" is "sirim." And so again, in kind of almost this poetic language, there's a play on words that he's using here, and basically the idea that Solomon is getting across here is that the praise of a fool is like the loud pop in the campfire when you're burning thorns or you're burning bramble, it's loud, but it doesn't last long, and it really doesn't do much good. That's kind of what he refused, or he compares, the songs or the praise of fools to. He says that it's loud, it's boisterous, and it gets everybody's oohs and ahs, but it doesn't really have any true, genuine, lasting meaning. Um, doesn't do a whole lot of lasting good. A wise person's rebukes in our life will accomplish much more in our lives than the flattery of fools. And I think we're all beginning to see that wisdom, the better part of wisdom tells that oftentimes sorrow is better than laughter, and rebuke is better than praise. He gives us a third one we're going to look at again. In a very simple way, he says the long path is better than the shortcut. There are a lot of different ways that we could put this, but I give you the same question that I asked you before. Why in life can this often be true as well? The long path, the long game, patience is better than the shortcut. Um, why is that? Because I'll tell you what, there are a lot of things in life we look for shortcuts in, and I'm talking about myself, all of us. And so I asked the question: can you think of some areas where playing the long game is better than taking the shortcut? And then also answer the question why you think that is the case. Why wisdom oftentimes teaches us that the long game, the long path, is better than the shortcut. And again, we'll read these verses here in just a minute. It's funny. I would say because Yoda said so. It's very true. Uh, um, Katie talking about rebuke. Being rebuked can help you learn from mistakes. Although praise feels nice, you may not necessarily learn something. It's very true. Anita says, again, there's something of value to be learned in the long path, right? Um, so some of you are given some, why the long game better than the shortcut. That's right. It's probably not the best idea, George, to ask for raise on the first day of your job. Chess is another one. The Claytons talk about the fact that you appreciate the destination more, right? Now that you've as Eric mentions, you kind of gain this experience on the long path. You have the Claytons also mentioned that you learn. You have time to learn and enjoy that journey, that path that you're on. Very true as well. Uh, Both what the Hearts say and what Kathy Hawkins say go together. Quick success is dangerous. Kathy Hawkins says there may be pitfalls in the short path. George Mitchell says because it's better to learn and grow and be rewarded after. Daniel says you learn or you gain wisdom along the way, whereas on the short path you might not gain wisdom you could use for future success. Right? Sometimes when we there's no doubt that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but that may not always be the best path. Might not be the best one to take. And so let's read verses 7 through 9 here. It says, "Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools." In verse 7, he says something really interesting there at the end. He says, "And a gift destroyeth the heart." Um, Most Bible commentators actually believe that this is referring to bribery, giving something as a gift in order to gain something. That bribery appears to be a quick way to get things done, but in the end, it actually destroys the heart. Taking the shortcut. Um, So, um, long, I'm just reading a couple other experiences here. Um, uh, the longer the time, Katie says, the more experience it's gained. Terry Cross says, long path is better for your mental health and maybe even your physical as well. Is very true. Anita says that shortcuts seem good at the time, but often reveal what was missing, right? And so, um, and that's very true. And sometimes we think that we're taking the best path and we miss some really important things. Kristen Kelly says a long path builds muscle, just like Terry Cross was talking about as well, in both a multitude of ways. Um, but here he says, you know what? Bribery appears to be the quick way to get things done, but in reality, it can destroy the heart. And then in verse 8, he says, notice the word again, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. And the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. I believe with all my heart, it is far better to wait patiently and humbly for God to work out his will than to demand our own way. That's the proud in spirit, right? God, this is the way it ought to be. This is the way it should be. I think this is the way it ought to be. It needs to happen this way. Why isn't it happening this way? This is the way it needs to happen. Now, notice the words here. He says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning. You know, it's important for us to notice both the ending and the beginning. Well, so let's think about this thing for a second. The short path um, and the long path, they could potentially ending up at the same place. But we need to pay attention to all parts of the path. Uh, the beginning of sin leads to death. But if God is at the beginning, then it could lead to success. There's actually an old Arab proverb that starts this way. It says, watch your beginnings. I think about the prodigal son, and obviously if we take it full circle, he comes back to the father, but he begins his journey with wealth, and it ends in poverty. Joseph, on the other hand, begins in slavery, but he ends up a ruler. And that is oftentimes the way that Satan works. Satan puts the best first, but it ends in suffering and destruction. So, sometimes, again, this short path, it's real easy, it's real good, it looks really good, it's going to be awesome, and then it ends in loads of suffering, loads of pain, loads of hurt. Where oftentimes God's modus operandi, his MO, the way he acts, is often that he saves the best for last. And so, oftentimes, the better part of wisdom tells us, take the long path. Be patient. Wait. Endure. The New Testament talks about that often, to endure. So, just a few things for us to think about that as well today. And one other thing he says, wisdom often teaches us that today is better than yesterday. And that might shock some people, okay? That today is better than yesterday. I'm going to read verse 10. We might end here, we might go a little bit further, but I have a feeling we might end here in verse 10 because it's a good cutoff point. If I go beyond that to verses 11 through 18, it might take up a little bit too much time, but we'll look at this one. Verse 10 says, say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. You know what? There's some people that were saying yesterday are better than today. And he said, don't say that, because wisdom has not informed those words. Now listen, please don't take this wrong, because I think we've all been there before. It's very easy for all of us, myself included. It is very easy for us to long for the good old days. Um, there's even biblical examples of this. In the process of building the second temple, the old men wept for the old days, but the young men sang because a new work had begun. Um, if somebody, so Anita asked the question, you mean the good old days are not so good? Um, it has been said that the good old days are a combination of a bad memory and a good imagination. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. I'm so thankful for um, for the past. I'm thankful for many things that have happened in the past, and I think we should. We talk about we have to understand. I think about this often as a pastor, that I'm standing on the shoulders of those that have gone before me, and I'm walking the paths that people have laid out before me for years and years of work and labor. And so I'm not saying throw out the past. I'm not saying throw out the past because it has no value. That's not what I'm saying. But Kathy Hawkins brings a good point. She says we often have a selective memory, right? And I'm glad that our imaginations and our memories hold on to the good things of the past. I really am. Um, but I think it is important to learn from the past and prepare for the future, because both are important, right? We learn from the past. If we don't, we're doomed to repeat it. Prepare for the future, okay? Because both are important. But guess what? We live today. And we live today in the will of God. And so we don't want to be paralyzed or hypnotized by yesterday or tomorrow. And sometimes they can both happen, right? We get so enamored with the past, right, that we miss what's in front of us today and what God desires for us to do today, right? Um, Sometimes we're also paralyzed by yesterday. Um, and the same thing with the future. Sometimes we're hypnotized. We've talked about this before, about what might happen in the future. Sometimes we're hypnotized by it. Sometimes we're paralyzed by it. But we have to remember that we live today, and we try to live today in the will of God. Today is the day. Today is the day. Um, yeah, the hearts mentioned that verse 10 has rebuked them many days. Eric brings up the point. Today is full of possibilities. You know what? I say again, I'm thankful for the past, and so I don't want there to be any mistake about that. I think we can be thankful, so thankful. I'm very thankful. But as I've mentioned before, I don't want I don't want the end of my life and ministry and all of those things to be filled with speaking of what God did in the past or what happened in the past. I want to live today in the will of God and honor God today and live today and focus on today what God has given me an opportunity to do. And that, guess what? Today can be better than yesterday. It can be. Um, and for us to remember that. Um, I know it's only 7:48, but as I said, it just verse 10 is a good cutoff point because, as I mentioned just a minute ago, or actually probably 35 minutes ago, wisdom tells us that, or we understand that wisdom can make your life better. Okay, we see that verses 1 through 10. Again, it comes by way of some surprises. Wisdom tells us today is better than yesterday. That that the long path is better than the short path, or the shortcut, that the rebuke is better than praise, that sorrow is better than laughter. Wisdom tells us that. But we're also going to see as we jump back into chapter 7 next week, that wisdom helps us to see life more clearly, and wisdom helps us to face life stronger. That's right. At the end of the day, Solomon realizes wisdom makes our lives better, clearer, and stronger. And that's why we should pursue after it. But when we come back next week, we're going to see the things that wisdom helps us to see more clearly. Some things that often can be distorted in our world and that are important for us to see clearly. But as we close this chapter on, this study today through these first 10 verses, wisdom may not always be what we think it is. Laughter is a great medicine, but sometimes we need sorrow. We all myself included, love to be praised. Sometimes a rebuke is what we need. Shortcuts, boy, being able to do without all the extra time and labor is great, but sometimes a long path is what brings about the real benefits. And while we're thankful for yesterday, today can be better. Today is better than yesterday. Any closing thoughts on these first 10 verses of Ecclesiastes, especially since we have a little bit more time? A little extra time. I won't keep us long, but if anybody else wants to interact, you're more than welcome to do so. And love to hear from you. You're smart. Pay attention to the past so you can learn from it. That's right. But you need to remember to continue looking forward. That's exactly right. And so, again, I'm so thankful for the things of the past, without a doubt. Colossians 3:20, right, tells us to set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. Terry Michelle Hart, that's right. Tell us to keep looking up, right? That's the way we end it every week, and I appreciate you giving us that verse and that reminder, because as we continue on, as we live life under the sun, I want to encourage you guys to always and forever keep looking up. So, appreciate you guys joining in tonight and for adding your thoughts to everything that was going on here. It's been very helpful. I hope it's been helpful to you as well. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you later.